Welcome to The Growth Spurt, a weekly AI podcast by the Second Baptist Church of Ann Arbor. This week we're going deep into Dr. Stephen J. Daniels Sr.'s sermon, The Blame Game.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Have you ever noticed
how
when something goes wrong, everyone starts pointing fingers?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, Dr. Daniels really breaks down why we do that.
Okay.
And more importantly, how to stop.
Interesting.
It's so fascinating how he uses Adam and Eve to illustrate this.
Yeah.
They ate the forbidden fruit, and instead of just saying, okay, we messed up, they immediately start blaming each other.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Even blaming God.
Oh, yeah. The woman you gave me.
It's almost comical how quickly they pass the buck.
Absolutely. But this blame game, it isn't just a funny story from the Bible.
Right.
Something we see all the time in our own lives.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And Dr. Daniels gives this example of a problem simmering beneath the surface in a relationship. Like, even if you try to ignore it, that tension impacts how you interact.
It affects everything.
It's like when someone says, it's fine.
Yeah.
But you know.
But you know it's not.
It's not fine at all.
Exactly. And Dr. Daniels suggests that's because we struggle to apologize.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why is saying I'm sorry so hard?
I know.
He says pride is a big obstacle. Admitting we're wrong.
Yeah.
It can be hard.
It hurts the ego.
Much easier to point fingers than to look inward.
I know. And he gives some funny examples.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like someone saying, well, I was wrong. BT.
Oh, and then it's everyone else's fault.
Exactly.
It's classic.
But he drives home the point that taking responsibility, however uncomfortable, is key to having healthy relationships.
Absolutely.
He emphasizes confessing our faults and being willing to accept the consequences.
And that's tough.
Yeah, but, you know, even while talking about consequences, Dr. Daniels reminds us about God's grace.
Okay.
Like Adam and Eve, they were punished.
Right.
But God still provided for them.
It's true.
He gave them clothes. He allowed them to have children. It's a beautiful reminder that admitting our mistakes doesn't mean we're doomed.
Right.
It opens the door to forgiveness, healing, and stronger relationships.
I love that.
Me too.
It's hopeful.
What I thought was really interesting is how he connects all of this back to our relationship with God. He points out how we sometimes try to shift the blame to God.
Wow. Yeah, like when things go wrong.
Yeah, and we ask, why did God let this happen?
Exactly. It's the same blame shifting, but with God.
And that can creep into how we treat others, too.
Oh, for sure.
We make excuses, we point fingers.
And downplay how we hurt people.
All to avoid taking ownership?
Exactly. And then we don't learn or grow from our mistakes.
Like we're trying to convince ourselves that we're not really at fault.
And that's a dangerous path.
Yeah, and Dr. Daniels encourages us to choose a different path.
What's that?
One of humility and vulnerability.
Okay.
To be willing to say, I messed up, I'm sorry, and I'll try to do better.
It's a simple but powerful message.
It is.
That's where real growth can happen.
He also talks about how avoiding difficult conversations can actually make the problem worse.
Like sweeping it under the rug?
Yeah, an unspoken issue doesn't just magically disappear.
No, it festers.
It creates tension and resentment.
And can lead to even bigger blow-ups later.
It's like a pressure cooker.
Oh, yeah.
If you keep adding heat and don't release any steam.
Ooh.
Exactly.
So what's the solution?
Dr. Daniels says it's honesty.
Okay.
Humility and a willingness to face our mistakes.
Not about drowning in guilt.
No, it's about owning up and making amends.
Taking responsibility.
And he reminds us that this isn't just about our relationships with other people. It's also about restoring our relationship with God.
That's important.
And he points out that even when we apologize, it doesn't mean the other person has to forgive us right away.
Right. Forgiveness takes time.
He uses this great analogy.
Oh, tell me.
He says, it's like saying, you've apologized now, get over it, according to my timeline.
Wow. Yeah, you can't force forgiveness.
Exactly.
It has to come naturally. You can't rush it.
Exactly. It unfolds naturally in its own time.
Like a flower blooming.
And Dr. Daniels also points out that even when we do apologize, it doesn't erase the consequences.
We'll still have to deal with the fallout.
Right. And that can be tough.
It can be.
But even then, Dr. Daniels reminds us that God's grace is always there.
Okay.
He uses that powerful image of Adam and Eve being banished from the garden.
Right.
They faced consequences.
They did.
But God still provided for them.
He did.
It's this incredible reminder that even when we mess up big time. God's love and compassion are still there.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
God doesn't just abandon us. Right.
When we make mistakes.
Exactly. He walks with us through those consequences.
He does.
Helping us to find healing and a way forward.
Yeah, and I think that's so important.
I agree.
Especially when we're talking about breaking free from this blame game.
Right.
It's so easy to get stuck.
In that blame cycle?
Yeah, like, well, if they had if I hadn't.
Exactly.
We're trying to rewrite the past.
Instead of focusing on what we can do differently now.
Yeah, we can't change what happened.
Right. But we can choose how we respond.
Dr. Daniels challenges us to shift our focus.
Yeah. He reminds us that we have the power to choose a different path.
To choose responsibility over blame.
And, he even brings up how this impacts future generations.
Oh, yeah. He talks about how our actions can affect our kids and grandkids.
He asks, could it be that your son doesn't take responsibility for anything? Because he had two dynamic examples who came before him who did the same.
Wow. That's powerful.
It makes you think.
It does, about the example we're setting. Absolutely. Our actions and attitudes towards taking responsibility might be influencing the next generation.
It's a call to break those negative cycles.
And to build a legacy of accountability and growth.
I like that.
And Dr. Daniels doesn't just leave us with the problem.
No, he gives us a solution.
He emphasizes honest communication. And facing those tough conversations.
Oh, yeah, head on.
He says, an unspoken issue is like a ticking time bomb.
I can say that.
It might seem easier to avoid it.
Yeah.
But eventually it's going to explode.
Exactly.
So it's much healthier to address things directly.
With respect and a willingness to listen.
And Dr. Daniels encourages us to lean into those tough conversations.
Instead of shying away.
Yeah, it takes courage.
It does.
And vulnerability.
But that's where real growth happens.
And connection.
And even when we're talking about apologies.
And forgiveness.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that it's not always a quick and easy process. No, it takes time.
True forgiveness takes time.
You can't force it or demand it from someone.
He even jokes about it.
Oh.
He says if someone's really hurt you, their birthday or Christmas gift might be a little light that year.
That's so true.
It's his way of acknowledging that forgiveness doesn't erase the pain.
Or the need for consequences.
Right. But his message is ultimately one of hope.
And transformation.
He reminds us that even the most broken relationships can be restored.
And I think that's a powerful message.
It is.
Especially for anyone feeling stuck in that cycle of blame and hurt.
Yeah.
He encourages us to let go of that need to be right.
To let go of control.
And surrender to God's grace.
That's beautiful.
One of the things that stood out to me was his emphasis on the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation.
Oh, yes, that was powerful.
He reminds us that just because we've forgiven someone, it doesn't mean the relationship is automatically back to normal.
Exactly. It takes time to rebuild trust.
Right. To heal those wounds.
And sometimes reconciliation might not even be possible.
That's true.
But even then, forgiveness is still important.
Absolutely.
Forgiveness is ultimately for our own benefit.
It releases us from bitterness and resentment.
That can poison our hearts.
And he even points out that sometimes the healthiest choice is to create some distance.
Or even end the relationship.
But even in those situations,
choosing forgiveness allows us to move forward.
Without carrying that burden of anger and pain.
Exactly.
Dr. Daniels also talks about seeking wise counsel.
When we're struggling,
he reminds us that we don't have to figure everything out on our own.
We have people we can turn to.
Yes, friends, family members, mentors, pastors.
People who can offer support and guidance.
And, of course, he emphasizes that God is always available to us.
God is the ultimate source of wisdom and comfort.
So if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed,
reach
out to God.
Spend time in prayer.
Seek his wisdom.
And allow his spirit to work in your heart.
Dr. Daniels also brings up the importance of setting healthy boundaries.
Oh, that's so important in any relationship.
It's about protecting ourselves emotionally and spiritually.
And communicating our needs clearly.
He gives the example of someone saying,
"What's that?"
"You apologize now. Get over it according to my wine timeline."
Oh, wow.
He's emphasizing that true healing takes time.
You can't rush it.
We can't control the process for ourselves or for others.
And that ties back to his point about forgiveness not erasing the consequences.
Exactly. We still have to deal with the repercussions of our choices.
And that can be painful.
It can.
But even in that pain,
God's grace is available.
He uses that image again of Adam and Eve being banished.
Facing consequences, yet still provided for by God.
It's a reminder that God doesn't abandon us when we make mistakes.
He walks with us through it all.
He does.
helping us to find healing and restoration.
I think Dr. Daniels does a brilliant job of connecting the Bible to our everyday lives.
I agree.
He uses the story of Adam and Eve.
To illuminate those human tendencies we all struggle with.
The blame, the avoidance,
Yeah.
the ego.
And he reminds us that those tendencies don't just impact us individually,
They affect our relationships.
creating a cycle of hurt and resentment.
That can be hard to break free from.
Dr. Daniels really challenges us to think about the long-term impact of our choices.
He says our actions don't just affect us in the moment.
They have ripple effects,
That can extend to our families.
and even future generations,
He uses the example of a parent who always blames others.
showing how they might be teaching their children to avoid responsibility,
And those patterns can be passed down.
creating a cycle of negativity.
But Dr. Daniels also offers hope.
Yes, he does.
He says we have the power to break those cycles,
We can choose to respond differently
to embrace accountability, to seek forgiveness.
and to model healthier relationship patterns for our children,
It's about recognizing that our choices have consequences.
and that we have a responsibility to make amends when we've hurt others
True strength is owning up to our mistakes.
and seeking to make things right.
I love that.
He also touches on the importance of self-awareness.
When it comes to breaking free from blame,
Sometimes we're so focused on what others have done wrong.
that we don't see our own role in the situation,
He encourages us to take a step back and examine our own hearts.
to ask ourselves, what part did I play in this?
Could I have handled things differently?
It's about recognizing that we're not always the victim,
We're not always right.
and sometimes we need to take responsibility for our own actions.
That kind of self-reflection can be uncomfortable
But it's essential for growth.
and transformation.
He also encourages us to reach out for help,
When we're struggling,
to seek wise counsel from people we trust.
friends, family members, mentors, pastors,
We don't have to figure everything out on our own.
and of course he reminds us that God is always available.
God is the ultimate source of wisdom and comfort.
So if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed, reach out to God
Spend time in prayer, seek His wisdom.
and allow His Spirit to work in your heart and mind. And it's so encouraging to know we have those resources, both human and divine.
Absolutely.
Dr. Daniels also touches on something else,
What's that?
the importance of gratitude
Oh, interesting.
in breaking free from that blame game.
Okay, how so?
When we're fixated on what's wrong,
Yeah.
it's easy to get caught up.
In negativity.
But he points out that when we shift our focus
Okay.
to the good things,
Did it positive.
it can change everything.
I can see that.
It opens our hearts to gratitude.
It's powerful.
And he encourages us to really notice those blessings,
To appreciate the good things.
to express appreciation to the people we love.
And to cultivate that spirit of thankfulness.
It's not just about feeling grateful.
Right, it's a choice.
It's about making that choice to focus on the positive.
He also challenges us to think about what we're thankful for in our relationships. When we dwell on our partner's flaws,
it breeds resentment.
but when we appreciate their strengths,
And those good times,
it strengthens our connection
it's choosing to see the best in each other.
instead of the negative.
And he also talks about forgiveness.
Oh, yeah. Essential for breaking free from blame
He says holding on to anger
is like drinking poison.
and expecting the other person to die.
We're the ones who suffer
So he urges us to let go,
of the past
to release the hurt,
and choose forgiveness,
not because they deserve it,
but because we deserve freedom.
of that bitterness.
And forgiveness isn't always a one-time thing.
The process.
Sometimes we have to choose it over and over,
But God's grace is there to help us.
every step of the way.
Dr. Daniels doesn't just stop at forgiveness, though.
Right.
He emphasizes reconciliation as the goal.
So forgiveness is the first step.
But reconciliation is about restoring the relationship,
Rebuilding trust.
finding a way to move forward.
together.
And he acknowledges it's not always possible.
Sometimes the damage is too deep.
But he encourages us to at least try
To extend that olive branch.
to see if there's a possibility for healing,
Because God is the ultimate reconciler.
always working to restore what's broken.
Dr. Daniels ends with a powerful call to action.
I know.
He urges us to choose gratitude, forgiveness, and reconciliation,
Not just as fleeting feelings,
but as daily choices,
and he reminds us
that we're all on a journey,
we're all works in progress.
and we all need grace.
And mercy.
And then he asks this question:
What's that?
is there anyone here who is grateful for the grace and mercy of God?
Wow.
It makes you think.
About how God has shown us compassion.
Even when we didn't deserve it.
And that inspires us to show that same grace to others.
To break the cycle of blame.
And create a world where forgiveness can flourish.
So that was Dr. Stephen J. Daniels' senior sermon.
The Blame Game.
A powerful message about taking responsibility.
Seeking forgiveness.
And building stronger relationships.
And a beautiful reminder that God's grace is always there.
Guiding us toward healing and growth.
What stood out to you most from this deep dive?
For me, it was the generational impact of the blame game. It made me think about the patterns I might have inherited.
And how you can break free.
To create a healthier legacy for my own family.
I was struck by how Dr. Daniels used humor.
He did.
Even when talking about serious topics.
He's kept it engaging.
And lighthearted.
He has a gift.
He challenged us to do better.
While reminding us of God's love.
And forgiveness.
It gave me a lot to think about.
Me too.
This is a message that will stay with me.
And what about you?
Yeah.
What resonated with you today?
What steps can you take this week to break the cycle of blame?
Could an honest apology be the first step toward healing a relationship?
Remember, taking responsibility might be tough.
But it leads to growth.
And deeper connections.
Go in peace, be blessed.
And may the joy of Jesus be yours.
We'll see you next week.